Meghan Markle and Prince Harry might be heading back to the United Kingdom. Yes, that United Kingdom, the place they couldn't wait to leave, the place they framed as unbearable, hostile, and deeply unfair, the place they said they had to escape in order to survive. And now, somehow, it's starting to look like the place they need the most, which already tells you a lot, because this isn't a victory lap, this isn't a triumphant return, this isn't even reconciliation. This is desperation dressed up as strategy, and once you see it, you really can't unsee it. Stick with me, because the reason they're circling back to Britain is way messier, way more uncomfortable, and way more revealing than the PR-friendly version you're probably going to hear. And if you're into royal drama, media manipulation, slow-burn scandals, and watching long-term plans quietly collapse, yeah, you'll want to stay till the end. Go ahead and like the video now, it helps more than you think, and let's get into it. When Harry and Meghan left the royal family in 2020, we were told this was their choice, their brave choice, their bold step into freedom. Harry even framed it as an act of protection, saying he was stepping back from everything he had ever known so he could move his family forward into a calmer, more peaceful life. Remember that word, peaceful. Because what followed was anything but. Within months of leaving, they signed massive deals: Netflix, Spotify, Penguin Random House, cameras, contracts, production teams, red carpets. They didn't run from the spotlight, they sprinted straight into a brighter one. The privacy era lasted about 5 minutes. And to be fair, at first, it looked like it might work. The world was curious. People were listening, watching, buying. There was goodwill, especially in the US, a sense of let's hear them out. But curiosity is a finite resource, and once it runs out, it doesn't magically refill. Spotify was the first crack. Meghan's podcast launched with a huge push, glossy branding, celebrity guests, and then quietly fizzled. 1 season, that was it. Deal canceled. And when Spotify executives started talking, they didn't sound impressed, more like exhausted. Netflix dragged on, projects stalled, content didn't land. Even the cooking show, which should have been the safest, easiest win imaginable, somehow became a punchline. Executives reportedly blamed themselves for greenlighting it. That's never a good sign. And suddenly, all those bold post-royal plans started to look shaky. Then came the speaking gigs, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Harry, once a prince whose mere presence commanded attention, now reportedly has a price list. Appearances aren't symbolic anymore. They're transactional. 6 figures plus expenses, allegedly, just to show up and talk. That's not influence. That's monetization out of necessity. And here's where things really turn. Harry's philanthropy has shifted. The Invictus Games, once genuinely respected, now feels like a branding tool. Media focus isn't on the veterans. It's on the outfits, the optics, the couple. Engagement with the actual competition is low. People aren't watching for the sport, they're watching for the Sussexes, or not watching at all. That's a problem, because when even your goodwill projects stop generating goodwill, you're in trouble. Public opinion reflects that. In the US, support has dropped sharply. Harry's popularity has fallen dramatically. Meghan's too. These aren't minor dips, these are serious slides. And once that trend sets in, reversing it is incredibly hard. So now, imagine being in their position, Hollywood interest cooling, deals collapsing, speaking gigs turning into a necessity instead of a choice, titles still technically intact but increasingly controversial, and a looming court case over taxpayer-funded security in the UK. Ah yes, security. This is a huge part of the puzzle. Harry has been fighting for UK taxpayer-funded security ever since leaving, and the logic behind this rumored return is simple. Physical presence, be seen in Britain, create pressure, force the issue emotionally and politically. If they can win that security battle, UK appearances become cheaper, easier, and more frequent. But the problem is obvious. Taxpayer money cannot fund security for non-working royals, and from everything we've seen, this case is likely to fail, which makes the timing of this return very interesting. And then there's Invictus again, a respectable excuse to be back on British soil. On paper, it sounds noble. In reality, many feel it's being used as cover, a way to shift focus back on them, a way to generate relevance. And relevance is the key word here, because right now they're losing it. Even Hollywood, which was supposed to be the promised land, has cooled off. Remember the Lion King premiere, when Harry awkwardly asked Bob Iger if there might be a voiceover role for Meghan? That moment wasn't charming, it was uncomfortable, and it spoke volumes about how far things had fallen. When you go from global power couple to quietly asking for work at a premiere, something's gone wrong. So now look at the UK again, the one place where their titles still carry weight, the one place where Harry is instantly recognizable, not as a celebrity, but as a prince. And that's the uncomfortable truth. The Sussex brand only works because of the royal connection. Oprah, Netflix, Spare, none of it happens without those titles, and they know it. Which is exactly why there's growing talk of those titles being stripped when William becomes king. And let's be honest, public support for that move is strong. So this potential return isn't about healing. It's about survival. And then there's Harry himself. Reports suggest he's happiest when he's away, on the road, speaking, traveling, not at home in Montecito, not in the mansion that was supposed to be paradise. Some have even described it as a prison to him. That's bleak. The UK represents identity for Harry, familiarity, purpose, a sense of who he is. California, for all its sunshine, hasn't given him that. He looks lost, and we've seen it. From the doorbell footage of him knocking on the wrong houses in London, looking confused and unsettled, to the visible discomfort when crowds react negatively. And yes, let's talk about that. They will be booed. Not threatened, not unsafe, but booed. Reputationally, the UK is hostile territory for them now, and Harry feels that. Meghan, on the other hand, seems to thrive on it. Even negative attention is attention. During the Jubilee at the Dodgers game, she clings, smiles, leans in. Harry looks tired, worn down. That dynamic matters, because this return would force the royal family into defensive mode, crisis management, silence, strategy. They don't know what the Sussexes might do, say, or leak, and that uncertainty alone creates tension. This isn't for the good of the monarchy, it's not for the public, it's not even really about reconciliation. It's about cash, relevance, and leverage.
Everything they tried outside the royal system failed. And now, the last remaining option is to reattach themselves, however loosely, to the institution they once condemned. That's not irony, that's consequence. So here's the real question, and I want you to think about it seriously. Is this return an admission that leaving failed, that the plan didn't work, that the life they built collapsed under its own weight? And if so, should the UK welcome them back, or should the doors stay firmly closed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to see where people land on this, especially viewers from the UK, the US, and long-time royal watchers. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next. Because this story isn't over, not even close. So let's keep going, because this part is where it gets uncomfortable. Not just awkward, not just messy, but genuinely revealing. Because once you strip away the headlines, the legal filings, the anonymous sources, and the glossy PR language, what you're really watching here is two very different people reacting to the same collapse in very different ways. Harry looks like someone who ran from a burning building only to realize too late that it was the only home he ever knew. Meghan looks like someone who never intended to live there permanently in the first place. And that difference matters. Harry was born into the system. For all its flaws, he understood it instinctively. The rules, the rhythm, the unspoken agreements. You show up, you smile, you shake hands, you disappear again. You don't monetize it, you don't weaponize it, you don't turn it into episodic content. And yes, he complained, a lot. Sometimes fairly, sometimes not. But deep down, that structure gave him purpose, it gave him boundaries, it gave him a role that didn't require constant reinvention. California requires reinvention every single day. And that's where he's floundering. You can see it in his posture during appearances, the forced enthusiasm, the rehearsed vulnerability. the way he scans rooms like he's not quite sure why he's there anymore. This is a man who used to walk into any space already knowing who he was. Now, every event feels like an audition, and auditions are exhausting. Meanwhile, Meghan operates differently. She understands visibility. She understands narrative control. She understands that even bad press keeps you in circulation. Booing doesn't scare her. It validates her relevance. It means people are still watching. Harry hears boos and feels rejection. Meghan hears boos and hears noise. That disconnect is dangerous, because when relevance becomes the goal instead of meaning, you start making choices that look desperate. And lately, everything about this potential UK return feels desperate. Let's be clear about something else that often gets glossed over. This isn't about safety. No one credible believes Meghan is in physical danger in the UK. That narrative doesn't hold. The risk is reputational. The risk is walking into crowds that no longer adore you. The risk is facing a public that feels manipulated, talked down to, and frankly, tired. And tired is worse than angry. Angry people engage, tired people turn away, which is exactly what's been happening. Even the media tone has shifted. The breathless coverage is gone. The sympathetic framing has cooled. Stories now read more like post-mortems than fairy tales. What went wrong instead of what comes next. That's not an accident, and the royal family knows it. That's why their response has been silence. No commentary, no invitations, no olive branches waved publicly. Silence is strategic. Silence lets the Sussexes twist in the wind without giving them new material. Because engagement feeds them, ignoring starves them. And this is why a physical return to the UK is so tempting. You can't be ignored if you're physically there. Cameras follow, headlines write themselves. The media circus reignites whether the palace wants it to or not. From a survival standpoint, it makes sense. From a long-term standpoint, it's catastrophic. Because once they're back on British soil, the contrast becomes unavoidable. Working royals versus non-working royals, duty versus deals, service versus self-promotion. The comparison doesn't favor them anymore, and Harry knows it. That's the tragedy here. He's not walking back into the UK as the cheeky spare everyone once loved. He's walking back as the man who burned bridges, aired family secrets, and then asked for the benefits without the responsibilities. That doesn't play well anywhere, especially not in Britain. And here's the quiet part no one likes to say out loud. This return won't fix anything. It won't restore their popularity. It won't restart dead deals. It won't suddenly make Hollywood interested again. It won't heal family wounds. It won't bring back the old Harry. At best, it buys them time, a few weeks of headlines, a temporary spike in relevance, maybe a sympathetic interview, maybe another round of controversy. And then what? Then the reality sets back in. The money still isn't flowing like it used to. The audience still isn't growing. The goodwill still isn't returning. And the titles they're clinging to are hanging by a thread. Because once William ascends the throne, the patience evaporates. The public support for stripping titles is real. And without those titles, the Sussex brand becomes just another celebrity brand, and not a particularly strong one. That's the clock ticking in the background of all of this. Time is not on their side. So when you hear about this return, don't think of it as a homecoming. Think of it as a last roll of the dice, a gamble that proximity will create power, that noise will create relevance, that controversy will create currency. It's a familiar strategy, it just doesn't work forever. And maybe that's the saddest part of all, watching someone realize too late that the thing they ran from was the only thing that held them up. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think this return changes anything, or does it just confirm what many people already suspect, that leaving the royal system didn't bring freedom, it brought collapse? Drop your thoughts in the comments, read what others are saying, and if you've made it this far, seriously, thank you. Hit like if this breakdown helped connect the dots, subscribe if you want more deep dives like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for being here.